April 16, 1945. A forest floor somewhere east of the Rhine, inside the collapsing Ruhr pocket. The air tastes of metal and wet pine. Every sound is muffled by a relentless drizzle that has been falling for 3 days, turning the soil into a thick, greedy mud that pulls at Elsbeth Richter's boots. She is 19 years old. For 2 years, she has worn the gray-blue uniform of a Luftwaffenhelferin, a female auxiliary for the German Air Force. Her world had been one of switchboards and radio intercepts, of coded messages crackling through a headset. Now her world is this patch of woods, the low, pregnant sky, and the unending thunder rolling in from the west. It is not the sound of weather. It is the sound of an army, the American Ninth Army. You can feel it in your bones, a vibration that travels through the soles of your feet and up your spine. It is the percussive rhythm of artillery, the methodical cough of M4 Sherman tanks chewing through the German countryside. The men around her, a haggard collection of teenage boys and weary veterans from a decimated Wehrmacht infantry unit, have stopped digging. They just listen. Their faces are pale, smeared with dirt, their eyes wide and hollow. They have seen the leaflets dropped from the sky, white squares of paper that fluttered down like premature snow, promising food and safety in exchange for surrender. No one speaks of it. To speak of it is defeatism. To be caught with one is a death sentence, but they all saw them. They all thought about it. Elsbeth huddles under the dripping branches of a fir tree, her fingers numb inside her thin gloves. She is clutching a small metal box that holds her sold book and a single dog-eared photograph of her family standing in front of their home in Solingen. Her father, proud in his railway uniform. Her mother, her arm linked through his, a faint, tired smile on her face. Her younger brother Thomas, squinting in the sun. That photograph is her anchor. It is the reason she endures the hunger gnawing at her stomach, the cold seeping into my marrow. Home. Family. It is the mantra that has kept her moving for weeks as their unit retreated, dissolved, and reformed into this ghost of a fighting force. A sharp crack splits in the air, followed by the whistle of something fast and heavy. Incoming, a voice rasps. Elsbeth flattens herself against the earth without thinking, her face pressed into the cold, damp soil. It smells of decay and rain. The explosion is close, a deafening roar that shakes the ground and showers her with dirt and splintered wood. Her ears ring, a high-pitched whine that drowns out the groans of the wounded. Someone is screaming. The sound is thin, desperate. When the ringing subsides, it is replaced by a new sound, a mechanical clatter and a deep guttural engine growl. It is getting closer. The Feldwebel, a man whose face is a road map of wrinkles and battlefield terror, scrambles to his feet. They're here! To the line! To the line! But there is no line. There is only a shallow trench, a few men with carabiner 98K rifles, and a single mud-clogged MG-42 machine gun. Elsbeth's job is communications, but the field telephone has been dead for 2 days. Her equipment, her purpose, is gone. She is just another body in a uniform, armed with nothing but a desperate will to see her family again. The ground trembles. Through the trees, she sees it. A monster of olive-drab steel, its long 75mm cannon swiveling, its hull plastered with mud and gear. A white star is painted on its side. A Sherman. Then another appears beside it, and a third. They move with an unstoppable, casual authority. The shooting starts, a frantic popping sound from the German rifles. It is like throwing stones at a giant. The machine gun opens up, its terrifying rip of 1,000 rounds per minute, but the bullets spark harmlessly off the tank's armor. Then the tanks answer. One fires its coaxial machine gun, the tracers a stream of angry red wasps cutting through the gloom. Another fires its main cannon. The world vanishes in a blast of light, sound, and pressure. When Elsbeth can see again, the German machine gun nest is just a smoking crater. The screaming has stopped. Men are throwing down their rifles. They are raising their hands, their faces streaked with tears of fear and release. The Feldwebel stands for a moment, his pistol in his hand, his expression one of utter disbelief. Then he, too, lets his weapon fall into the mud. It is over. The noise of battle is replaced by the rumble of the American engines and the shouting of commands in a language she barely understands. GIs in mud-caked uniforms and strange high-sided helmets emerge from the woods, their M1 rifles held at the ready. They look impossibly large, well-fed, and confident. They move with an efficiency that is both terrifying and mesmerizing. One of them, a sergeant with tired eyes and a dark stubble, gestures at them with his rifle. Aufstehen! Raus! Hands on your heads! The words are sharp, practiced. Elsbeth rises slowly, her legs shaking. She places her cold, trembling hands on her head, the worn photograph in its metal box a cold weight in her pocket. She is a prisoner of war. But as they are herded out of the woods and onto a muddy track filled with American trucks and jeeps, she feels not terror, but a strange, numbing clarity. The war is over for her. Soon she will be home. She has to believe that. It is the only thing left.
May 2nd, 1945. Prisoner of war temporary enclosure A2, near Remagen. The world has been reduced to mud and sky. For weeks, that has been Elsbeth's entire existence. The camp, one of the infamous Rheinwiesenlager, is nothing more than a vast expanse of open field, sectioned off by barbed wire. There are no barracks, no tents, no cover from the elements. Just tens of thousands of captured German soldiers and auxiliaries, a sea of gray and field gray uniforms turning brown with filth, huddled together for warmth on the cold, sodden ground. The weak spring sun offers little comfort against a wind that sweeps down from the hills, carrying with it the constant chill of the Rhine. You learn the routines of survival quickly. You learn that your shovel is your most prized possession, used not for fighting, but for digging a hole in the ground to sleep in, a shallow burrow to shield you from the wind and rain. You learn to guard this single blanket you were issued with your life. You learn the hollow, aching emptiness of true hunger, a constant, grinding pain that eclipses all other thoughts. Food is a thin, watery soup, a slice of black bread, and occasionally a piece of hard cheese, doled out once a day. It is never enough. Every day you see men who were once soldiers, proud and strong, grow weaker, their faces becoming skull-like, their uniforms hanging off their emaciated frames. Death is a quiet, frequent visitor in the camp. Elsbeth is assigned to a women's compound within the larger enclosure, a small section of the vast field separated by yet more wire. Here are nurses, secretaries, signal operators like herself, women who serve the Reich in non-combat roles. Their presence does little to soften the reality of their situation. The guards are American GIs from a military police battalion. They patrol the perimeter, watch from wooden towers, their faces impassive, distant. To them, the prisoners are not individuals. They are a problem to be managed, a logistical nightmare of defeated humanity. Elsbeth watches them, studies them. Most are young, barely older than she is. They smoke cigarettes, their laughter carrying on the wind, a sound from another world, a world with hot food and warm beds. One of the guards is a sergeant, a man with a quiet, observant air. His name, she learns from the stencil on his helmet, is Miller, Sergeant Frank Miller. He is not like some of the others who shout or mock the prisoners. He is just there. He walks his post with a steady, methodical pace, his M1 Garand slung over his shoulder. His gaze sweeps over the compound, but it rarely lingers. It is the detached look of a man doing a job he did not ask for, a farmer from a place called Ohio who has seen too much war and now only wants to go home. Sometimes Elsbeth sees him just staring out at the river, his expression unreadable. She wonders what he is thinking. Does he see them as monsters, or does he just see a mass of defeated people? Identity erodes in a place like this. Her name is Elsbeth Richter, but here she is a number, barked out during roll call. Her uniform, once a source of pride and belonging, is now a prisoner's garb, stained and torn. The only thing that connects her to her former life is the photograph, which she keeps hidden in a small pouch she fashioned from a piece of canvas. At night, in her shallow hole, she takes it out. She traces the faces of her family with a dirty finger. Their smiles seem to mock her from across an impassable gulf. They are warm, they are safe, they are home. The thought of them is both a comfort and a torment. It is the fuel that keeps her going, the promise that this purgatory is temporary. Her father had been critical of her choice to volunteer, but he was her father. He would understand. He would welcome her home. Days bleed into weeks. The camp becomes a city of misery, with its own grim economy based on bartered cigarettes and stolen scraps of food. Rumors fly like crows. The war in Europe is over. Hitler is dead. The Americans are starting to release prisoners. The word Entlassung, release, is whispered like a prayer. They begin processing the women first. One day, a group of officers with clipboards arrives at their compound. They call out names, ask questions. What was your unit? What was your role? Are you a member of the Nazi Party? Elsbeth answers truthfully, Luftwaffenhelferin,
Signals auxiliary. No, not a party member. They write it down, their faces showing no emotion, and move on. Then one morning, the unbelievable happens. A lieutenant stands on a crate and reads from a list. The following personnel are to gather their belongings for processing and release. He begins to read the names. Each one is met with a gasp, a cry of joy. The women on the list begin to weep, to hug each other. Elsbeth holds her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. She listens, her entire being focused on that one sound. And then she hears it. Richter, Elsbeth. The sound of her own name is a physical blow. Air rushes back into her lungs. Tears stream down her face, cutting clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. It is real. It is happening. As she gathers her maker possessions, her blanket, her tin cup, her precious photograph, she catches a glimpse of Sergeant Miller watching from the wire. Their eyes meet for just a second. There is nothing in his expression, no pity, no joy, just a quiet, weary observation. But for Elsbeth, his gaze doesn't matter. Nothing matters except that single glorious fact. She is going home.
May 28, 1945. Solingen, American Occupation Zone. The journey home is a disorienting collage of fractured images. A ride in the back of a canvas-topped GMC truck packed so tightly with other released prisoners that no one can sit down. A processing center in an old schoolhouse where they are given delousing powder, a small ration of bread, and a stamped set of discharge papers that are more valuable than gold. And then, finally, the simple act of walking out a gate with no barbed wire, no guards, no one telling you where to go. Freedom is a vast, terrifying silence. Elsbeth stands on a dusty road, the papers clutched in her hand, and looks at a landscape that is both familiar and alien. This is her Germany, but it is a wounded, broken version of itself. The walk to Solingen takes 2 days. She travels with a small group of women for safety, sleeping in a bombed-out barn, sharing the last of their rations. Every village they pass through tells the same story. Buildings are skeletal ruins, their hollow windows like eyes in a skull. Piles of rubble, neatly stacked by the Trümmerfrauen, line the streets. White flags and bedsheets hang from the windows of the houses still standing. American jeeps and trucks are everywhere, kicking up dust, their occupants regarded with a mixture of fear, resentment, and a desperate hope for food. The conquerors are now the landlords. When Elsbeth finally reaches the outskirts of her hometown, she breaks away from the group. Her heart pounds with a nervous, soaring anticipation. The destruction here is less severe than in the larger cities, but the scars of war are still visible. She walks down streets she has known her entire life, but now they feel strange, tilted. She sees faces she recognizes, but they are gaunt, their eyes averted, unwilling to meet her gaze. Her uniform, faded and ragged as it is, marks her. It is a symbol of a past everyone is now desperate to forget. She pulls her thin civilian coat tighter around herself, a futile attempt to become invisible. And then she is there. Her street. Her house. It is still standing. The roof is intact, the windows are not shattered. The small garden in front is overgrown but alive. A wave of relief so powerful it makes her dizzy washes over her. It is all right. It is all going to be all right. She walks up the familiar stone path, her legs feeling weak. The paint on the front door is peeling, but it is the same dark green she remembers. Her hand trembles as she raises it to knock. The sound echoes, impossibly loud in the quiet street. She waits. For a moment she hears nothing. She is about to knock again when she hears the scrape of the bolt being drawn back. The door creaks open a few inches. Her mother's face appears in the gap. It is older, thinner, etched with lines of worry that were not there before. Her hair is grayer. For a second, her eyes register only confusion, then a dawning, horrified recognition. Elsbeth? The name is a whisper, a breath of disbelief. Mutti, Elsbeth chokes out, a sob catching in her throat. I'm home. But her mother makes no move to open the door wider. She glances nervously back into the house, then back at Elsbeth. Her eyes flick up and down, taking in the worn uniform visible beneath the coat, the matted hair, the thin, dirty face. The expression is not one of joy. It is one of fear. What are you doing here? Her mother asks, her voice low, urgent. The question is so unexpected it feels like a slap. I was released, Elsbeth stammers. The camp, I walked from Remagen. I'm home. The door opens a little wider, and now her father is there, standing behind her mother. His face is grim, his posture rigid. He was always a man of rules, of order.
He looks at Elsbeth as if she is a stranger who has appeared on his doorstep bringing trouble. "You cannot be here," he says, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "What?" Elsbeth's hope begins to curdle into cold dread. "Vadi, it's me." "We know who it is," his jaw tight. "You made your choice, Elsbeth. You chose to wear that uniform to serve them. We have to live here now. We have to answer to the Americans. We have our reputation to think of. Your brother, Thomas, we have to protect him. We have a life to rebuild. Your involvement, we cannot have that associated with this house, with this family." Every word is a hammer blow, shattering the fantasy she had clung to through all the months of mud and starvation. This was the one thing she never considered. Not once in all her desperate daydreams did she imagine this. She imagined tears of joy, a warm bath, a hot meal. She never imagined this cold, hard wall of rejection. "But I have nowhere to go," she pleads, the words tearing at her throat. "I am your daughter." "You are a reminder of what has been lost," his voice unwavering. "A reminder of a shame we must now put behind us. It is better for everyone if you go. Find your own way. We cannot help you." His eyes are like stone. Her mother looks away, her face crumbling, but she says nothing. She does not defy him. The door begins to close, slowly, deliberately. Elsbeth sees her mother's pained face for a final second before it disappears. The bolt scrapes shut. The sound is final, utterly final. Elsbeth stands on the path, her discharge papers still in her hand. The photograph in her pocket now feels like a lie. She is home, but she is homeless. She is with her family, but she is an orphan. The world, which had collapsed once in a forest under the weight of American tanks, collapses again, right here, on the doorstep of the only place she had left to believe in.
June 19th, 1945. A back alley in Solingen. The summer sun is a cruel mockery. It bathes the ruins in a warm, golden light, making the jagged edges of bombed-out buildings seem almost beautiful. But it offers no warmth to Elsbeth. For 3 weeks, she has been a ghost, haunting the streets of her own hometown. Survival has become a series of desperate, humiliating calculations. Where to find water that is safe to drink? Which bombed-out cellar might offer shelter from the nightly patrols of the American military police? How to silence the constant, ravenous ache in her stomach. She is one of thousands of displaced persons, a sterile allied term for the human debris of the war. She has sold her coat for a few loaves of stale bread. She has learned to move through the shadows, to make herself small and unnoticeable. The shame of what her family did has burned away, replaced by the single primal instinct to live another day. She tried to find work, but her recent past, her lack of papers beyond the simple release form, and her gaunt appearance make her an object of suspicion. No one will help. To the Germans, she is a painful reminder. To the Americans, she is just part of the rebel. Her days are spent watching, waiting. Her best chance for food is near the American depots or mess halls. There's always waste. GIs are careless with their abundance. Sometimes a cook will dump a pot of potato peels or leftover stew into a bin out back. These are jackpots, fought over fiercely by skeletal children and other wraiths like Elsbeth. Today, she is hiding in an alley across from the supply depot set up in the old town hall. She watches the jeeps and trucks come and go, listening to the loud, confident chatter of the soldiers. The smell of coffee and frying bacon wafts from an open window, a tantalizing torture. She sees a GI emerge from the back of the mess, carrying a crate of empty C-ration cans. He dumps them with a clatter into a large metal drum. Elsbeth's eyes scan the ground around the drum. Sometimes a can isn't entirely empty. A forgotten spoonful of hash, a piece of fruit cocktail clinging to the bottom. It could be enough. She waits until the soldier goes back inside, then darts from the alley, her movements swift and silent. She is bent over the drum, her hand reaching in, when she hears the crunch of boots on gravel behind her. She freezes, her heart seizing in her chest. Caught. The penalty for scavenging on military property is severe. She slowly straightens up and turns, expecting a rifle butt, a harsh command. A GI is standing there, watching her. He is a sergeant. He is tall, and the sun is behind him, making it difficult to see his face. But there is something familiar about his posture, the way he holds himself. "You," he says.
The single English word is not angry. It is quiet, laced with surprise. Her mind races. Does she know him? He takes a step forward, out of the glare of the sun. His face is no longer a silhouette. It is a face she remembers seeing through the haze of rain and despair, a face she saw watching over a field of mud and barbed wire. Tired eyes, a square jaw covered in stubble. Sergeant Miller, from the camp at Remagen. Elsbeth says nothing. She cannot speak. Fear and shame have stolen her voice. She expects him to yell, to call for the MPs. He must recognize her as one of the prisoners. But he just stands there, looking at her. His gaze takes in her ragged clothes, the dirt on her face, the desperation in her eyes. He is looking at her not as a problem, not as a former enemy, but as a person. The silence stretches out, thick and heavy. Then he does something she does not expect. He turns, without a word, and walks back into the mess hall. This is it, she thinks. He is getting the guards. I brace myself, her body tensing for the inevitable. But when he comes back out, he is alone. He is carrying something. A loaf of fresh bread, wrapped in paper, and a sealed can of peaches. He walks over to a low, rubble-strewn wall a few feet from her. He sets the bread and the can down on the stones. He looks at her one more time, a long, searching look. Then he turns and walks away, getting into a nearby jeep and driving off without a backward glance. Elsbeth stares at the food. It cannot be real. It must be a trick, a trap. But the smell of the bread is real. She approaches it cautiously, like a feral animal. Her hands shake as she picks it up. It is heavy, real. She tears a piece off and shoves it in her mouth. The taste is overwhelming. She has not tasted anything so good in what feels like a lifetime. She devours half the loaf right there in the alley, tears streaming down her face, not from sadness, but from a profound, shattering relief. The next day, she returns to the same spot, driven by a sliver of impossible hope. She waits for hours. Just as she is about to give up, the same jeep pulls up. Sergeant Miller gets out. This time he has a K-ration box. He places it on the same wall and drives away. This becomes a silent ritual. Every day or two, he appears. He never speaks. He just leaves something. A can of beans, a chocolate bar, a small bag of coffee, and leaves. It is an act of pure, inexplicable compassion. He is giving her the means to survive. One afternoon, after leaving a can of stew, he doesn't get straight into his jeep. He pauses, his hand on the door, and looks at her across the alley. He hesitates, as if debating with himself. Then, his voice is low, not demanding, just a simple question. What's your name?
July 10th, 1945. The Solingen Command Post, U.S. Army. Elsbeth. She spoke the name so softly he almost didn't hear it. Sergeant Frank Miller looked at the young woman, the girl, really, standing in the alley. The name seemed too solid, too real for the ghost she had become. For weeks, their strange, silent ritual had continued. He would leave food, and she would take it after he was gone. He knew he was breaking a dozen regulations about non-fraternization with the local population. He knew his CO would have his hide if he found out. But every time he saw her, gaunt and hunted, he saw more than just a defeated German. He saw the face of a war that had chewed up everyone, on every side. He saw a kid from a farm in Ohio who just wanted to go home, and he saw a girl from a German city who had no home to go to. After she told him her name, the silence between them began to thaw. He learned her story in broken pieces, a mix of her halting English and his rudimentary German. He learned about the flak battery, the chaos of the Ruhr pocket, and the mud of the Rhine meadows. And then she told him about the closed door. As she spoke, her voice devoid of emotion, he felt a cold knot of anger tighten in his gut. He had seen the worst of combat in the Herdgen forest, seen men die in unimaginable ways. But this quiet, domestic cruelty seemed a different kind of evil. To survive a war only to be thrown away by your own family, it was a betrayal he couldn't comprehend. His name was Frank. He didn't tell her much about himself. He spoke of the cornfields in Ohio, the smell of the earth after a rainstorm. He talked about fixing tractors, not tanks. Simple things. Normal things. Their conversations were brief, conducted in the shadow of the supply depot.
It was not a friendship. It was something more fragile, more elemental. It was a connection forged in the ruins, a recognition of a shared humanity in a world that had tried its best to extinguish it. He knew he couldn't keep leaving her food forever. It was a temporary fix, a bandage on a gaping wound. She needed more than charity. She needed a foothold. She needed a purpose. Frank was a sergeant, and in the sprawling bureaucracy of an occupation army, a sergeant with a good record had a little bit of pull. He watched the local German women who were hired to clean the American command post. They were vetted, given passes, and most importantly, they were given one hot meal a day from the mess hall. It was menial, back-breaking work, but it was salvation. It was safety, sustenance, and a few Reichsmarks a week. He went to the mess sergeant, a man named O'Malley with whom he'd shared more than a few bottles of liberated schnapps. He called in a favor. He vouched for her. He said he knew her from a vetted family, a sly lie to grease the wheels. O'Malley, more concerned with his dwindling coffee supply than the politics of hiring, shrugged and told him to have her report to the kitchens the next morning. When he told Elsbeth, she just stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. A job, a meal, a pass that meant the MPs wouldn't arrest her for being out after curfew. It was a chance to rebuild a life from absolute zero. The next morning, he met her outside the command post. She had washed her face in a public fountain and had tried to comb her matted hair with her fingers. She looked terrified. He walked her to the kitchen entrance, past the guards who knew him, their presence making the transaction seem official. He introduced her to Sergeant O'Malley, who grunted, handed her a bucket and a mop, and pointed to a long, grime-covered hallway. Floors, all of them. Start there. Elsbeth stood for a moment, holding the wooden handle of the mop. It felt solid in her hands. The smell of the place was overwhelming. Soap, bleach, coffee, and bacon. It was the smell of order, of a world that was functioning. It was the smell of a future. She looked up and saw Frank standing at the end of the hall, watching her. He didn't smile, but he gave a short, almost imperceptible nod. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, of encouragement. And then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the labyrinth of the American military machine. She began to scrub. The lye and the soap stung her chapped hands, and the muscles in her back quickly began to ache. But with every motion, every pass of the mop across the dirty linoleum, she felt like she was washing away more than just the filth on the floor. She was scrubbing away the mud of the prison camp, the shame of the alleyway, the cold finality of her father's closed door. This was not a grand victory. It was not a happy ending. The world outside was still a broken, uncertain place. Her family was lost to her. Her country was in ruins. The future was a vast, intimidating fog. But here, in this hallway, with a bucket of hot water and the promise of a meal, she had a foundation. It was a small, fragile thing, built in the ruins of her old life, but it was hers, and it had been given to her by the one person in the world she had been taught to call her enemy.